Hey
Huh?
Scott, how are you
Hey,
doing?
I'm not doing well. That picture you chose was horrible. I mean, seriously, anybody who's watching this is like, tonight we've brought Chris Farley back from the dead
I
to do a
don't think it's a
very
bad picture.
special interview. I mean, there's some like serious like neck fat hanging over the. Was that from the internet?
Yeah, everybody's their worst critic.
I mean, jeez.
Well, welcome to this show, which, as of yet, some of the two. Well, maybe I can ask you. There's two possible names. I put it out there, and one there might be a copyright issue, but the two names that became most uh, seemed like the best options and most popular were Cliff Notes or Cliff Talks. What do you think?
I mean, Cliff Notes is the
Yeah, Cliff
that's
Notes.
obviously yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Or
welcome to
or
this.
or 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 something using maybe like the cliff's edge
Uh huh.
or falling off the cliff
Yeah.
or I mean there's so many
See, I can utilize your
bad
your skills as a
puns.
writer. Keep going.
Yes, like see how clever I am. um Cliffhanger.
Uh-huh.
Geez, we could just go on all night.
What about conversations with, I don't know,
Cliff.
conversations off the cliff?
I mean, off the cliff. I don't know, you just have it's such a good name for it, just welcomes any kind of pun that I think you'd
Yeah.
want to like play into that.
Yeah.
Cliffside.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to introduce you. This is Scott Rosenberg. Scott writes, and he has written things such as Things to Do in Denver, When You're Dead, Beautiful Girls, Con Air, Disturbing Behavior, Gone in 60 Seconds, High Fidelity, he co wrote, and also co wrote Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, Venom, Jumanji, The Next Level. Uh, and in television, he co created ABC series October Road and Life on Mars, Happy Town, CBS series Zoo. Uh, Executive producer, which I'm really curious to hear about that. High Fidelity for Hulu, starring Zoe Kravitz, and then the upcoming Cowboy Bebop, starring John Cho, and Citadel, starring Richard Madden, and One Punch Man and Grasshopper Jungle. So anyway, I know that's not even all of what you've worked on, but what I this show has been music centric, but I want to hear um, about how music influences you. But before we kind of talk about that stuff, um, I'm just curious what it was like growing up in Needham.
What it was like growing up in Needham? Well,
Yeah, Needham, Mass.
it was wonderful growing up in Needham. We Needham wasn't really the same as it is now. Like I think when I tell people I'm from Needham, they think that I grew up in this very prosperous suburb, 20 minutes outside of Boston, which it is now, but it certainly was. It had a much more blue collar feel to it when we were growing up. So I wrote this movie, Beautiful Girls, which was completely based on growing up or my friends in Needham. And when I meet people today, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm from Boston." Oh, you wrote Beautiful Girls? Yeah, I'm from Boston, and I grew up in Needham. And they were like, "Wait a minute." They can't reconcile. They don't understand because the Needham of today is it's very sort of upwardly mobile. I think it's pretty expensive to live there now.
Mm.
Um, that's not to say it wasn't then, but it was sort of just a burgeoning kind of bedroom community, I think, when my parents moved there. Um, and my father quickly lost his job or lost his business right when we arrived.
Hmm.
And we were among the poorest people living in, like, it's this weird sort of Beverly Hillbillies in reverse kind of thing. Like we moved to the nicer suburb and then basically went broke.
Hmm.
And like growing up, we never had furniture in our living room.
Uh-huh.
It was always unusual amongst my brother and our friends. You got to go to the Rosenberg's house. They don't have furniture in the living room,
Uh,
which made for a nice area to play, but it was kind of sad and pathetic. Certainly, when my parents had friends come over,
uh,
there was nowhere to sit. But it was a great place to grow up for sure. It really was.
it was like a safe community where you could be kind of free to run around, or
Yeah, I mean, things are so different now than then. I mean, I'm sure that we were we were being molested by the neighborhood weirdos. We just didn't know about it. Nobody talked about it. So it's a joke, Cliff.
Yeah, and I should say that that your mom, Aunt Susan, is how I know your mom. Your mom married my uncle many years ago, and my uncle has passed. But that's how we know each other.
Right.
And I have gone to see and watch movies with your mom, and I know that she loves film, and so I'm curious about what her influence was and what the influence your family influence was with films and movies and
Well,
TV.
it's weird because I mean I was always a writer, even from the second grade. I was the kid who, in fact, my mother just sent me the poem. I was the kid, if the principal was leaving, like I would write a poem and read it in front of the whole school. And I just did that. I had a couple of teachers that were incredibly influential. I mean, even as young as second grade, Mrs. Gordon, and fifth grade, Mrs. Crow, and sixth grade, Mrs. Pratt. Like, I remember them, and they really pushed me in. They saw something there, and they pushed me in that direction. I was also terrible at everything else, so it was a very it was sort of serendipitous that like there was one thing I was good at, so there was no question that if I couldn't figure out how to earn a living that way, then I would probably be pushing a shopping cart and panhandling, and I might actually have had a better life. But so I was always a writer, and then just on the movie thing, it was just, my father took us to movies that he shouldn't have been taking us to at a very young age.
Do you remember what some of those movies were?
Well, I mean, this was also in the early 70s, which we now consider sort of like the golden age or the second golden age of cinema, late 60s, early 70s. So it was, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Dog Day Afternoon and the Towering Inferno, although maybe people would think that is a classic. Chinatown, The Sting, Deliverance, like all these really sort of phenomenal movies. And he was taking us. We were, I don't remember if he was bringing my brother, who's 4 years younger, but he was certainly bringing me.
You're about how old?
I was probably like 10.
Okay. Yeah, those are heavy movies for a 10-year-old.
Yeah, and I was, and of all things, I mean, I've said it many times before. It was a movie called The Poseidon Adventure, which was this like sort of like the first, like, or not, maybe it was not the first, but the second. There was a whole genre of film called disaster movies: Airport, Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, Earthquake. And The Poseidon Adventure was something my grandmother took me to, my father's mother, and it was about a ship that. An ocean liner that capsizes in the middle of the ocean, and it's upside down, and the survivors, it was Gene Hackman and Ernest Borgnine. And I remember very, very like I'm telling you, Cliff, I can't tell you what I had for breakfast this morning, but I remember so vividly. I remember what the theater was like. I remember what it smelled like. I remember who we sat next to, and I was so blown away by, because up to that point, I think I'd only seen animated stuff. And that movie came out, I think, in 73 or 74. So I was young. And it was sort of right there and then I think I realized like the power of what movies can do and how they can make you feel.
Yeah.
And even though it was kind of a bullshit, it was, probably considered not a great movie. The one thing that they definitely did in those days that I think is a bit of a lost art for those kind of movies is you really knew all the characters. It was this massive cast, and you really you got to know all of them in a very, very sort of brilliant way prior to the disaster happening. So you're truly invested emotionally with them, and you have complete skin in the game. To take you through the rest of the story. Which I think is not as, it's not as carefully it's not as carefully I don't think people try for it as much as they should in those kind of movies. I think today, certainly in television they do, but in movies, in these big giant sort of bloated popcorn movies, with exceptions, some of the character stuff is kind of held to the wayside, because what they're really after is, big giant trailer, what they call trailer moments, which is the explosions and the thing and the effects and all that stuff. So yeah, that was kind of it.
Okay. And how was music influenced? And did you ever play an instrument growing up?
It's one of the great, I've said it many, many times, that no matter what happens in this life, I can marry a wonderful girl and have beautiful children, which I have. I can make tons of money in the movie business, which I also have. I could win an Oscar. I can win 5 Oscars, which I haven't. I could help cure cancer, which I haven't. I could do all that, and my life will have still been a failure because I cannot play an instrument.
Did you try?
I did try. I tried twice on two separate occasions. I tried when I was the one that's most tragic is when I was 10 years old. There was a guy. He was a guitar teacher, and his name was Mr. Stella. He was an old man. Mm-hmm. He smelled terrible. And every Friday night, he would come over and take me into the basement. Again, he was probably one of the ones who was molesting me. My parents would be upstairs. I'll never forget. They'd be upstairs having a Sabbath Shabbat dinner. We're Jews, and they did that back then. They practiced more than they do now. And like my grandmother would be over, and I'd be downstairs, and he would be teaching me. And I just didn't like anything about the experience. I didn't like how long it took. I wanted to be, I was like, why aren't you teaching me, the jumping jack flash, the chord progression of jumping jack flash? Why are we doing like these scales or whatever? And so I asked my parents if I could. I begged my parents to let me quit, and they did. Which I really have thought long and hard about suing them for letting me quit, because if they didn't. If they didn't, I was like 8 or 9 years old, and if they didn't, I could be Eddie Van Halen right now.
It's true. I had a similar experience where I played violin and I actually really liked it, but my parents didn't see me practicing. It was like a secret thing, and the lessons stopped, and it was like I was composing music. Why do you make me stop?
Right. It's a bummer. And so then I picked it up again. So it always bothered me, and I think there's some musical talent in the family. I know that my father played piano growing up. He stopped a long time ago. My aunt, I think my grandmother did on their side, but I stopped. And then years later, so this now probably 15 years ago, the girl that I was dating at the time, we both started again. She started taking lessons, and then I joined her, had a teacher. First thing I did was go to the guitar shop. I was in Los Angeles, and this sounds so obnoxious, but it's true. And by this point, I'm like a screenwriter who's like earning a living. And I walked into the place. Imagine this: if you're the salesman, this is the guy's dream. He probably still talks about it. I walked in, looking like this, and I said, what's the most expensive guitar you have? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't want to buy the most expensive guitar you have, because acoustic guitar, because I knew that if I did, then I would feel guilty if I wasn't practicing. Mm-hmm. So it was this beautiful black Taylor. I don't remember how much it was, but it was a lot. And it was, it's at this point I'm 40 years old or something. And it's the memorization is the problem. It's, forget about the fact that my fingers couldn't, all that stuff, but it was really, really, that was the thing that was so frustrating, because your memory is just not what, so I just couldn't remember, and I practiced, and
you were regularly practicing. It wasn't that
I was practicing, and we would travel with them. That was always, like I always said, she was kind of a beautiful girl, and I said that was always the best part of my whole favorite part about that. The second guitar part was just us walking through airports carrying our guitar cases with, because she was
like, who's that rock star?
I was tall and wearing the glasses, and we'd like walk through, and I would just love everybody, like, seriously. But eventually it just didn't stick. And that beautiful guitar, that expensive guitar, it basically it sits exactly the thing I feared most is where it is. It's a piece.
It
It's an
taunts you.
objet d'art in my TV room in Los Angeles. It just collects dust, and I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, about old dad, and that's the only time it gets played is when, you know, on their way in or out before they're going to watch, you know, Scooby-Doo or whatever. They give it a strum. So then now COVID hits, and I'm in we're in Martha's Vineyard for the summer and for a while, you know, and I was just saying to my wife before we got here, I was like, I know what I'm going to do. This is perfect. I'll take it up again. I said, whatever you do, do not let, this is a vow I'm making right now. We were driving somewhere. I said, do not let me, I know there's guitar instructors because there's a guitar shop here in the island, and I'll bring the guitar, but no, maybe I won't bring the guitar, but I'll get a guitar there, and I'm doing it. And so this is now end of July, and I still haven't done it. Well, it's very humbling, you know. It's very humbling to, but it bothers me so much. I can't tell you. Like, I'm so jealous of people that just like can pick up. There's a guy staying with us now, and he just can pick up a guitar and just. Again, I'm not, at this point. I know it's too late for me to, you know, start a band. But just to be the guy like sitting around the campfire, you know, and just strumming. Let's play some James Taylor or some, you know. Some Eric Clapton or something, and just let's all sing, you know. But no.
Yeah,
no.
I can relate. It's hard to start something new. Who's some of your favorite guitarists?
I mean, you know, all the usual. I was a massive, growing up. I was a massive Who fan.
Mm.
So, you know, Pete Townsend, obviously Jimmy Page, obviously Clapton, Keith. Prince, I think, is, you know, one of the great, you know, but I mean, there's no, you know who's incredibly underrated, is, and I only say that because I'd seen them many times in concert, but I hadn't really paid attention, is Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac. Is just a phenomenal technical guitarist, and I'd met him a few times, and was sort of blown away by, like, I got to see him rehearse because we have a mutual friend, and I got to see him rehearse for that album that he was doing with Christine McVie. They came out with this sort of a couple of years ago, which is a phenomenal album, by the way, although I don't think it sold very much. But yeah, really, really beautiful guitar player.
Cool. What role did music play growing up? I know you took lessons and it didn't. I mean, I wonder if you had a teacher that was like a young, hip teacher who was teaching you songs that you're into, you'd have probably a different outcome as far as your interest in it.
For sure. But then who knows what would have happened, because like I always think about that in the, you know, you go left or you go right. I'm sure that if I was proficient at the guitar, I would have absolutely wanted to go in that direction for probably all the wrong reasons. And just because I could play guitar doesn't necessarily mean that I would be good at it. Doesn't necessarily mean I could make a living at it. Doesn't necessarily mean I could sing. And, you know, Cliff, I would want to be the front man as well. Like, I'm just going to be in the background playing guitar. That's not acceptable to me. So, and you can hear my voice, I probably couldn't sing. So who knows if I would have even, you know, ever gone to Hollywood, and you know, I might have just been a failed musician at this point. Which, well, by the way, and then I would be giving guitar lessons to somebody else in the basement and on the cycle.
You would perpetuate that cycle.
You would perpetuate the cycle, exactly.
What was I gonna say? Music
was huge. It was huge. It was probably bigger even than movies. Growing up, to me, it was again. I grew up in the 70s. It was the era of, you bought like stereo components. You bought them in pieces, and you bought the receiver. First, you got the receiver and speakers, and a turntable. And then when you saved up a little more money, or I don't your parent for Hanukkah or birthday, you get the tape deck. And then I remember like I wanted this thing called like an equalizer, which was this ridiculous thing. I don't think it did anything, but it looked really beautiful. It was actually the size of the other. It was a Techniques. It was I had a Pioneer. I had a Pioneer receiver. I had a JBL turntable. It's amazing the shit you remember. I had a TIAC tape deck, cassette deck, and then I had these KLH speakers, and then my friend Uni had the JBL speakers, and that because he had like money and he had like a better stereo. And the biggest deal of all was finally like saving up enough money through summer jobs and shit to get. This is when I'm older. This is when I'm like junior high, high school, and those JBL studio monitors, which was like complete game changer for the home stereo system
for the sound.
But it was a big deal. It was the music was a very, very big deal. I mean, I to the point where I remember the Hot Rocks, which was a Stones compilation.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what your first album or first few albums were.
That was Hot Rocks was my first, followed very quickly by Meatloaf's Bad Out of Hell, which I say proudly I know the words to every single song. There's only 7 of them, but I know the lyrics to every single song on that record, which a lot of people like to shit on that record, but I still think it's amazing. Kiss Alive 2 was another one. No, Kiss Alive was the first one.
And were you watching them on TV also around the same time?
Kiss?
Yeah.
No.
No, okay.
No, they weren't on TV.
They weren't on TV.
I'm much older than you.
But I know they did eventually have a TV show and all that.
Yeah, no, that was later.
Okay.
Later. So those were another big one was Elton. It was Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy by Elton John. It was like I think the follow-up to Yellow Brick Road, maybe, which had been this massive record, and then he followed up with that, which was not. I don't think it was considered such a success, but I love it. And then Who's Next is another big one, which to this day is and then fairly soon after that was Born to Run and Darkness on the Edge of Town. Like I was too young, I think, for the first 2 Springsteens, but then I went back and revisited them. But it was like I feel like actually Darkness was the one that it was the first Springsteen record I bought, and then went back and
you ever get into Nebraska?
Yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely. We were just talking about that because it's such a it feels like a lot of bands after they have like massive success will follow it up with going a completely different direction, which Nebraska came on the heels of Born in the USA, and it's a very different thing. I feel like you two did it to a certain extent after Joshua Tree. Yeah.
And so you had mentioned that when your talent was writing and you could get in front of a group of people or a crowd and you could present. So do you feel like performance was kind of a natural thing for you or gravitating towards performance?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I went to this camp, this creative arts camp in Dover, Mass for 3 or 4 years where I was helping to write the plays, but I was also acting in them. And I really loved that. But it was just one of those things where thankfully I never thought that I was, I mean, I think I was okay, but I wasn't like, I was never like, oh, I could make my career doing this. Only because I wasn't that talented, and B because I wasn't that handsome.
You're a very handsome guy.
Geez, I mean, I was waiting. The big pause there was for you to go like, come on, Scott. No, but it's also you think being a writer is difficult. Being an actor is. I mean, there's just more. There's more of them. It's insane. So no, I never pursued it. But I think that part of being a good writer, certainly being a good screenwriter, there is a performative nature to it, even when you're writing, because you sort of. I mean, not that I'm like saying the dialogue out loud, but it's sort of having an ear for, for the rhythms of the way people speak. So I think that was certainly helpful along the way.
And do you think your love of music influenced that as well, the rhythm of your writing?
I think so. I mean, I think like I've always been. I think if you asked anybody in show business what was, where is Scott Rosenberg best at? They would say his dialogue. And I think that came from it. It does have a particular rhythm. And I think that again, it's the same thing. It's not something you can teach, it's like you can go to a million film schools and they can teach you like the basic structure. And maybe to a certain extent, they can teach you how to develop character, but nobody can teach you how to write dialogue. You can either do it, or anybody can write sort of.
It's a craft, but there might be certain elements.
Yeah, I think it's the same way with music. You can teach somebody how to write, how to play guitar or write a song, but it doesn't. I think you're born with it. I think I really do think that is what separates. The artists that we love and that are successful, and from everybody else.
Yeah. So Metallica, I think, has they have a place in your heart. What are some other bands like that? One thing I was when I was doing a little bit of research when we were going to have this conversation was I saw that you had mentioned Lynyrd Skynyrd and the Allman Brothers also for Con Air, that they influenced that. So I'm just curious, how has Metallica, what has been their influence, and what has been the Lynyrd Skynyrd and the Allman Brothers?
Well, again, every script that I write, almost every script I write, I kind of.
That's my son.
It's amazing. I give it it always has some kind of musical identity, and there are songs that or there are bands that it's a vibe, that I'm trying to, and with Con Air, he was a guy from the South, and I just always said, and I remember telling Nick Cage early on that, it's Ronnie Van Zant. Like he's Ronnie Van Zant, he's Greg Allman. Like that's who Cameron Poe is. And I was listening to it a ton, especially Skynyrd. I'm way more of a Skynyrd guy than an Allman Brothers guy, although I love the Allman Brothers. And I mean, to the point where it's one of the most sort of beloved lines in the movie is because I was listening to so much Skynyrd. When they're all getting away and they're in the plane, they get away in the middle of the movie and they're all dancing around to Sweet Home Alabama, and the Steve Buscemi character says, "Define irony: a bunch of assholes dancing on a plane to a song made famous by a band that died in a plane crash," or something like that. To the point where I literally somebody sent me a T-shirt that had the exact like somebody made T-shirts. So it just helps to inform it. Metallica, it's funny. I love Metallica. I've always loved Metallica, but Metallica was if it just got cut from the movie, but in the original draft of Con Air, the John Cusack character, who's like this federal marshal, he was much more like, he was like a metalhead. In fact, his character introduction is he is like crowd surfing at a Metallica show. Like they were like, "Oh my God, the plane's been hijacked. Where's Vince Larkin? We got to find Vince Larkin." And then they cut to like his partner or something, and she's like, "Oh, I know where he is." And then you do you hear the opening, gong, 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 and then you cut to, and it's like a Metallica show, and they didn't. That never. But Metallica was always a band. It was always, again, not so much anymore, but it was always a great band to listen to, especially when I was had like some writer's block, and I would just like go into my office and just crank it and just, have a few beers and just try and like work through the block, and it's just something so
that inspired you.
There's just something, there's something very liberating about that kind of, the intensity of it.
It's funny, Lars Ulrich, the drummer for Metallica, he is often kind of like Ringo. I feel like when I first started playing the drums when I was a kid, Ringo Starr, people were like, "Oh, he's not that great a drummer," which, I disagree with. But I feel like Lars is the butt of a lot of jokes now, which I don't quite get. I mean, he plays the songs great, I think. But
I don't think that's why he's the butt of the joke. I think he's the butt of the jokes because in the history of rock and roll, there's never been like the drummer who is like the sort of the and I don't mean in a pejorative. I don't even mean brains behind like he's like the business guy, right? He's like the way that you think of Jagger, or the way that you think of Bono. You know, that's the way you think of Lars. Like he's like 360 about like what the Metallica, the name and the thing, and he's so in a way that Ringo certainly never was not. You know what I mean? So I think I don't think it's about his playing so much. It's kind of there's something kind of goofy about that guy. He talks this way, and he's so kind of like. I met him a couple of times, and he could have been cooler. And I met him because we had it was a movie that never got made. That I wrote with a couple of other guys, and it was a sort of action adventure movie, and the sort of man for hire that it's about these kids who go into Afghanistan and they're trying to rescue a friend, and they hire this like man, picture like a Viggo Mortensen type who's like this badass like mercenary who's obsessed with Metallica, and his like all-terrain vehicle is named Lars, this big like thing that they go in. And we used tons of Metallica music, and we write it into the script. And I ran into him at a party when we were sort of it looked like maybe we had a chance of the movie getting made. And at that time, they were they were just not people that licensed. Okay. Now pretty much everybody licenses everything because there's no more rock and roll radio, and there's no way for these guys to make money. And I actually think the big deal was when they used "Who Are You" in the credits of CSI, that first CSI, all of a sudden, like the Who catalog went insane, and then everybody realized that, oh wow, this is the new
good for sales.
The new rock and roll radio is TV and movies. I mean, and like right around that same time, Grey's Anatomy was happening, and the OC was happening, and like people were, oh, you put a song in the thing, and so it changed everything. So I saw Lars at this party, and I was like, hey, I was drunk, I'm sure, and I was like, hey, we just wrote the script, and like you guys never listened to it. And he was like, just if I remember saying why. He's like, because most of it's shit. All the ones that want to use our stuff, like he actually would read the scripts that they would send for the and he was like, shit. And I was like, well, mine's not shit. And he was like, well, send it away. And of course, they never made the movie, so it never came to fruition. But yes.
How many for every thing you've written, how many of those screenplays have been written? Like for everything, because I know you're working constantly. Like for how much work have you produced, and how much of it's actually been turned into a film or a TV show?
Oh, I mean, it's too depressing to contemplate the percentage of films that I've written that have been actually made. I don't know. I think I have a credit on, I don't know, 9 or 10 movies, or uncredited on maybe another 9 or 10 that I worked on but didn't have a credit for, that I rewrote or whatever. But I've probably written 50 or 60 scripts. So not a good percentage.
Well, it seems okay.
But not one script, even if it doesn't get made, is a waste of time. Separate from the financial aspects of it, it's always good to it's like rehearsal, right?
Or working out,
working out. Yeah, the more you do, the better you get. I've learned more from like the scripts that didn't work, I think, than those that did. You know?
That's interesting. Well, some guy named Joe Kaufman, who I think you know as well, my brother, he was asking how is writing dialogue different from writing song lyrics?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's I love writing song lyrics. I always have.
Do you have any songs out there? Have you sent them to anyone and had songs?
Well, there's one song that I wrote the lyrics for this TV show that we did called Life on Mars, that was on ABC a few years ago with Harvey Keitel. And we did, it was set in 73. It was a cop show set in 73. And based on there was a British show that we remade it with not great success, although the show was really cool. It had amazing music in it. And we did an episode where there was a sort of glam rock singer, sort of cut from like, David Bowie, David Johansen, that kind of thing, was accused of murdering a girl. And so we had to write a song for him. his name was, I can't remember the name of the character, but we had to write a song that he would perform, and it sort of had to sort of be in that genre. And it was very much a Ziggy Stardust kind of rip off this character.
Uh-huh.
And so I wrote the lyrics. It was called "The Last Planet I Kissed,"
Uh-huh.
and this guy from Gomez, you know that band?
Yep.
So the guitar player for Gomez, he wrote the music, and the song's awesome. It's really good, and he sang it, and he recorded it.
And did you just give it to him and say, "Okay, you make a song," or did you have more of? Were you more involved?
No, he was. Well, it was my show, so he was. I'm literally looking up right for some reason. I'm trying to think of what year it was. I don't know where it was. Anyway, it was at. Ian Ball was his name. And he was a friend. He was a friend of a friend. So I'd known him socially, and so we just called him up and we're like, "Look, I need something. It needs to be this thing." And I'll send it to you because I don't even think you can find it online. Maybe you can find it online because there's probably a video.
Okay. Yeah, I can see if I can find it and play it.
But it was super fun.
And so were you like there when he was recording it?
Yeah. And so he recorded it, and then we had to play. Then we had to do it. Have the actor performing it. So we shot it twice with him lip syncing.
Say the name of the song again.
It's called "The Last Planet I Kissed." Last Planet I Kissed from Life on Mars.
That's not what I wanted.
Let me see if it's
The last.
Yeah, there it is. Sebastian Grace. Sebastian Grace and the Electric Insects was the name that we came up with. You see it there?
That was the name of the band.
You see it there? You see it's Sebastian Grace. It's YouTube.
Let's listen to it for a second, if you don't mind. Okay. Let's see, I just have to share this. Okay, tell me if you can hear this. I'm starting it in just a second.
It was skipping all over the place. That was really a rough recording. I don't know. I think there's a cleaner version somewhere.
Okay, that's cool though. So did you give him a melody or anything like that, or did you just say go?
No, I literally gave him the lyrics, and he came out.
Did you say
again? We wanted to be really, really lo-fi, grungy. I mean, it's not as bad as the one you just played, but yeah, it just wanted to feel very garagey and
has like a little bit of a punk vibe.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. But Iggy Pop kind of thing, it was a little like that. And he's great. And Gomez is, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're amazing.
Bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
That's cool. And so what is your workflow like, or what, how did it start? How's it changed? And then what's it like now? How's it evolved?
The older you get, you're certainly not as, you lose your fastball a little bit. You just don't have the same sort of stamina. I think about when I was first starting out, when I was in my 20s and I was in LA, and we were like I was so poor, and I shared a room, and we, I mean, I'm so old. It was like we wrote on typewriters, and I had a Smith Corona electric typewriter, and literally couldn't afford a desk, so I would write on my lap, and I would put a towel because it got hot. So I'd put a towel in between the typewriter and my legs, and like my roommates would come home, and I'd be just sweating. And in those days too, you're always rewriting a screenplay. You just always have to. And but today it's just cut and paste. But in those days, if you change something, you had to start all over again and retype and scripts are like 120 pages. So but you were in your 20s, and you were hungry, and the ideas were just crackling, and so it was a completely different mindset. And now I think it's much more of a job. You try and bring to it the same enthusiasm and be inspired the same way that you did, but it's a little bit different. And then you don't, there are sort of 3 or 4 different ways that you do it, as a professional screenwriter. One is I come up with an idea, and I take it around, I pitch it. So it's called a pitch. So there's no script, but it's like, hey, are you interested in doing a show about a movie about blah, 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 blah.
Just like the synopsis.
If they like it, then they buy it. And so then that what you're writing, you're paid to write. The other thing is a spec, which is, I'm not asking for anybody. I'm just betting on myself, and I'm just going to go write it and then send it out. Mm-hmm. But there's a good chance that nobody will want it. And then the third one is the studio calls you up and says, hey, we own this book, or we have this, would you be interested? So there's sort of 3 different ways. And I think that I've always tried to only take jobs that I would write if I'd come up with the idea on my own, like, to get that. But, that gets, when the sort of realities of life and living, and I got mouths to feed and everything else. So sometimes you wind up working on stuff just because it's a good paycheck.
Yeah.
But then I'll always go back and just write something small just for myself, and then maybe try and get it made. It's weird. It's a very weird time now in the business, just because there's kind of no middle class anymore, and adult dramas have been sort of relegated to television. They're certainly not making like those movies that I referenced earlier. They're just not, it's real. I mean, unless, obviously George Clooney can get them made, and, there are certain people that can, but most of the time they're either these big giant, Avengers kind of movies, or really, really kind of small, like independent, the sort of, the movies that like sort of Miramax invented, like back in the day. Whereas the sort of middle of the road kind of just doesn't seem, they're just not there. I mean, I guess they're on Netflix now, or and I just think that in the wake of Sopranos, I think it's all on television,
Yeah.
Sort of in the wake of Mad Men, Breaking Bad, Sopranos, and like this golden age of television too.
Yeah. Did you ever, when you were pitching, or did you ever worry about intellectual property or about your ideas, protecting your ideas? And if so, what would you do? No, you just put it all out there.
It's another one of those things that it's one of the great myths. People don't, there's no reason for anybody. I mean, yeah, another writer could potentially steal it, but you're never, nobody, movies are so expensive to get made. Like, nobody's going to rip you off. If they like your idea, they'll pay you and fire you, and then hire somebody they like better. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense for them to get caught up in these like crazy court battles that could potentially halt the release of the film or the release of the show. And it's just one of those things. And like, is there a chance like another writer is going to steal from you? I guess, but like they would have to be in my pitch meeting, I never sort of worried about that.
Yeah. And so what, for those of us that are not in the film and TV industry, what does a screenwriter do? What does a director do? What does a producer do?
Well, the screenwriter writes the script, which is basically, everything that you see on the screen. Certainly it's the story, it's the dialogue. It's not how it is told visually. I think a lot of new young screenwriters make that mistake of trying to be like super explicit about the camera, what the camera does, and that's really not our job, because that's what the director is going to come in and do.
Uh-huh.
But you definitely want to extol a sense of place and tone and feel, and then the director will take that and capture it visually. You know, I mean, film is very much a director's medium, whereas television is more of a writer's medium, where sort of the director is the boss. The director, he'll cast it, and he's the one who hires the composer, and it's just it's a complete full. You know, I can work on 5 movies in the time it'll take a director to make one. You know, it's really a year. It's a good year of their lives. So, you know, I think the director has to be completely committed to whatever that story is. And a producer, I mean, a producer says it's one of those umbrella terms. There's all different kinds of producers. There's a line producer who, like, his job is just everything. The physical. He's almost like the manager of the film. You know, he'll hire the crew, and he'll hire the crew, not like the keys, not like the cameraman but like, you know, the grip and electric, and he'll do everything to make it so make the production happen. And then there's more the creative producer, whose job it is. He's the one, you know, sort of the cliched. He's the one who's like dealing with the studio and you know, dealing with the agents and all that stuff. So that's kind of basically it, I think. In a really
as you've way. You know, you've been now making films or been writing for, you know, for your career. Has been, you've had a long career. How has that morphed to? You're starting to take on new things, and what is inspiring you now? How do you keep that inspiration? And also, who are some people maybe who you haven't worked with that you'd like to work with?
I mean, there's lots of people that I would like to work with. The list is too long, but I think that you have to try and you have to try. Challenging yourself is the easy one. You know, you definitely can get into a rut, like you're just like writing these kind of movies, and I've always tried to work on something. The one kind of prerequisite for me when I'm able is just to have whatever I'm writing now be completely different from the one I just finished. You know, as a way to just keep it fresh and keep it, and I mean different in every, like, I've never been like, I don't operate like in a single genre. Like, I'm not like a horror guy, or I'm not like a comedy guy, or I'm not like, I think I can do it all. I don't think I can do any of it like amazing, but you know, it's I'm not as good as many, but I'm better than most.
And that's okay to be that.
No,
it's worked out okay.
But it's so I think that's, you just you find inspiration in you know, in many things. Certainly being a father now, that's a whole other. It's like, wow, you're looking at that, and particularly as an older father.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you how that's changed either your writing or how you approach work, that sort of thing.
It definitely has. It's you're just a little bit more, I think, attuned to the world as a whole. You know, I wrote something in a script that I wrote recently, and I was about how and it was about a guy who was a new father, and that's sort of what he compared it to, that, you know, that Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," where like all that shit is North Korea, South Korea, Marilyn Monroe, like, and it's all just coming at you. I was like, that's fatherhood.
Yeah,
like, just like it's you notice things that you didn't notice before, like the neighbor's music being too loud, or I mean, this is pre-COVID that, you know, that I had the kids, but like shit that I just didn't even care about. Like, I mean, I know it's not right to say, but like climate change, yeah, I can take it or leave it. But, you know, but all of a sudden it's like, wow, that's something that is really like, oh my God.
Things can become weightier, heavier.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think
well.
it can't help but, you know, permeate your work, you know.
Definitely.
And I showed both my kid, not the little one's too young, but like my son. By the way, my son's name is Bowie.
Yeah, yeah,
That should tell you how music is important to me.
yeah, for sure.
And we showed him the 2 Jumanji movies, and he's a big fan.
Nice.
He's a big fan.
That's cool. That's awesome. Lois Kaufman asks, how does COVID, and we talked about this a little bit before, how's COVID impact your work?
Well, it's impacted my work insofar as, hi Lois, it's impacted my work insofar as who knows when we're going to start shooting again. So that's, I have a TV company, and I have 3 partners in the company, and one of them has been in London about to start a show for Amazon, and like he's just there. He moved his family there, and they're just not doing anything yet. Another one is in New Zealand, where they are going to be able to shoot because New Zealand has figured their shit out.
Yeah, they have like what, 0 new cases or something, or they had something.
He had to quarantine for 14 days, but like really quarantine, not like just you go to your hotel and you like keep an eye. Like he went to a facility.
Really?
14 days where he was allowed like an hour to like step outside. It was like prison. But that's, but they're doing it right. So we don't know when we're shooting, but at the same time, like, the writing can be done. So I've been working on the stuff. The one thing that has been a really nice byproduct of all this was, I wrote a novel in 1990, or I started one in 1990, and I kind of never finished it and never really got it published. And when this COVID started, I had like a little bit of a lull in between jobs, where again, there was no like urgency to, you have to get this done because we're going to be shooting. So I kind of picked it up, and I literally just finished it a couple of days ago. And
nice.
That's been amazing because I hadn't, I got my start, or I started out certainly in high school and college writing fiction, not scripts, and they're very different beasts. And so it's been really, really, really powerful, going back to it, finishing it. And I think it's going to inspire me, when I on Monday, I have to start rewriting this movie that I'm doing for Disney. And I just feel completely energized for the past 6 weeks or whatever it's been, finishing.
That's awesome. Are you going to get it published?
I'm going to try.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so when you co-write with other people, especially on a big film like Jumanji or something like that, what is that process like? Are you sending stuff back and forth? Like, is it like musicians? Like if I have a melody and I send, or I have chord changes and I send it to somebody else, and then maybe I have the chord changes, they put the melody, or maybe anyway, is it that same sort of process where you're sending things back and forth, or is it like really clear, or is it just different every time?
It's different every time. The guy that I've been, because I most of the stuff that I've done by myself, and then I started on the Jumanji movies and with Venom, working with this guy who's one of my partners in the TV company, this guy Jeff Pinkner, he's great, but he came out of the J.J. Abrams world. He was on Alias, and he ran Lost, and he ran that show Fringe, and we had this partnership on this, and then they sort of asked us to work together on the Jumanji movie, the one, the Welcome to the Jungle. And how we work is we outline together and we figure out what the movie is, which is where most of the hard work is done in the outline phase. It's very. So
before you even do that, what are you given before you even start something like that? I mean, where do you start with an outline?
Well, it all depends on what it was. Like in the example of that first Jumanji movie, there was actually a script. A script had been written. It was a script that the studio liked parts of it, but had issues with other parts of it, and so that was a little different. But we rewrote the script. So maybe the second Jumanji is a better example because there was nothing, and it was Jeff and the director now and myself, and we basically sat in a room for 3-4 months and just kind of figured out like, here's the idea, and just kind of giving it a shape, and the only signposts you have are in sort of the end. Movies are 3 acts, and the end of the first act is usually when there's a shark in the water, like we got a problem with this shark, and the end of the second act is Quint's dead and Hooper's gone, and it's just the sheriff who's got a fear of water on the boat alone with just the shark. That would be, so it's kind of like, it's so so you use that as a guide, and then you just start. In a movie like Jumanji, it's like, there's certain things that you have to satisfy. There's got to be X number of kind of what they call set pieces, which are like the sort of big fun sequences. But you gotta know what your character arcs are, and by character arc I mean sort of like how does a character? Nobody wants to see a movie where the guy starts out here and he ends up at the same place. So every character sort of goes through what they call an arc. And you just figure that shit out, and then eventually you kind of write up an outline, and then when you go to script, it's like that's kind of what you do. It's the music comparison is apt. Is we split it up, like I'll write this scene, you write this scene, I'll write this scene, and then we swap, and then you rewrite me and I'll rewrite you, and then sort of one person wants to do once that's all done, then only one person will like take the whole thing and put it through, because you want to have it needs to have like a voice. Like it needs to have like a coherent, because even though we write similar, we all write different, and so you do like a voice pass.
So they'll kind of clean it up to have that voice.
So the whole thing feels yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like being together in the room kind of surprised me. It sounds kind of like the days when bands would all track together or write together, literally as well.
No. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean we don't. When we're writing our scenes, we're not in the same room.
Yeah, no, I mean before that.
The outlining. Oh yeah, for sure.
So for 3 months, you were actually in a room all together.
Oh yeah.
Like you're just kind of putting the ideas out there and putting them down.
Yeah, big whiteboard. Like, wouldn't it be fun if we did this? Wouldn't it be fun if we did this?
So the equivalent would be like, hey, check out this beat. Let's try this beat with it. Let's do this baseline.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, and then it became the remote sort of working process after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how, are you ever given music and saying like this is the vibe or anything like that when you're writing, or do you do that for yourself? We've kind of talked about that.
You do it for us. Do it for yourself. In television, what's been great about television is, again, it's a director's medium, features, and so you have less say. But in TV, it's funny. It's why I was so attracted to it, because when I first started those ABC shows that you mentioned, which none of them were big successes, and I was kind of doing really well as a screenwriter, and people were like, why are you doing television right now? And I was just like, there's so many songs I want to put in shows, and like, I would just like you're supposed to have a music supervisor, which we did have, but there was no need for usually a music supervisor. Again, these are my early shows. The ones that they come out, they find songs and they put it in front of you. But like on those shows, like I was the music supervisor insofar as we had great music supervisors, but they were just going out and getting the clearances and getting the licensing, because I knew
what you wanted,
every single song that that we wanted to use in those ABC shows. But it's great. Even with High Fidelity, we had these amazing music supervisors, and they found, it's just fun. It's so fun. That's such a fun part of it,
So it sounds like that's something that's inspiring for you to work like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
To be able to play that role.
Yeah.
Ruth Shear, my aunt Ruth, she asked, any favorite recent TV series?
What are we watching that we love? I'm trying to think. TV shows for me are literally like jokes. Like I hear them and I can't, like the minute we stop watching, I can't remember. What did I just watch?
I hear that.
We were into Ozark. We liked Ozark. We just finished the 3rd season of Ozark. This like so.
Have you seen a show called Normal People? Danielle and I.
Yes, we watched it. Yes.
What do you think of that one?
I'd read the book, and which was a beloved book. People went crazy for the book. I didn't go so crazy for the book, and I felt the same way. I thought it was beautiful. Beautiful. I loved the 2 leads, like Beyond.
Yeah, they were great.
I loved the music, but at the end of the day, I was just a little, and maybe it's just my age, but I felt the same way about it that I felt about the book, which is I was like, why? I didn't like. Why are you having such problems? Just get together. You like each other.
That's exactly what I said to Danielle, to my wife.
Especially the one part where like he has to go home and she doesn't invite him to live, and then that causes them to I'm like, what? Just and I guess young people don't speak to each other. Is that what they're trying to say? But I don't know. But I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. But it's been, we just don't get to watch as much stuff as we used to, just because the kids and the COVID and everything else. It's not like it would be. Like, believe me, if I was still single, I mean, this is a terrible thing to say, but I think I might be enjoying the COVID. Like, I'd be watching so much television.
You'd have all that
so
time
many movies, read so many books, write so many scripts. But
I hear that with the kids. I have a 3-year-old, and time is not the same. It's not your own time like it is when you're not.
Well, even separate from, like, they go to bed at 8 or 7 or 8, whatever, and then the bigger issue is you're not staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning to watch shit, because they're up at 7, so you're up at 7. So that's the biggest thing. You got like an hour a night, maybe, because I still like to read before I go to sleep, and so there's literally like an hour and a half. Billions is a show I watch. Like, I also have shows that so the shows that it's the wife and I together, and then there's stuff that we go our separate ways. And Billions is one of those that she doesn't watch Billions with me. Mindhunter was that.
The Americans. Ruth was wondering about The Americans.
You know what? It's one of the great. It was. I have not watched it, and it's on the list. It's very that's the big. That's like the show that I always say, like, I wish I broke my leg so I could just be in the hospital, and basically COVID was that, but the timing was all wrong, because I had the like, again, if not for the kids, I would have burned through The Americans. It's the ones that have like 5 or 6 seasons are very daunting to say, like, I'm gonna tackle the, you know what I mean? It's the ones that have a couple of seasons. It's just easy, and it's 8 episodes, and you can just, like, bite it off and know that you can get through it. But I hear it's amazing, and everybody who I really respect their taste is obsessed with The Americans. So I know it's, hopefully I'll break my leg.
Okay. Well, thanks for the suggestion, Aunt Ruth. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. Really appreciated it. And hope you have some good isolation time in the Northeast. And is it where is it exactly you are?
Martha's Vineyard.
Martha's Vineyard, yeah. Well, enjoy the harbor, and
yes, there's a harbor.